Thank you. Oh, wait. Where's the flag? We need a flag.
No flag.
They may have it in the other room. They may have it in the other room. Well, okay, so I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed as the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave. Great job, everyone.
Thank you, Rochelle, and Dr. D.M. Edwards with our invocation and introductions.
Thank you, President Allison. Would you all bow with me? Our Father, we're grateful for the freedoms that we have as Americans, for the privilege to gather together in meetings such as we're enjoying today. We thank you, Lord, for this beautiful sunshine that we've enjoyed, for the success of our recent Young Citizens Awards banquet that we held at Tyler Junior College was such a great occasion to honor these outstanding students and these teachers of the year. We pray for the work of both our own Tyler Rotary Foundation and the work of our Rotary International Foundation around the world. Thank you for this food, for every blessing. We ask it all, Lord, in your perfect and powerful name. Amen. Amen. Please be seated, and we'll recognize our visiting Rotarians and our guests that are here with us today. Let me ask John Sanders if he would stand and wave at us. He's new in Tyler, moving here. Where from, John?
From Louisville, Kentucky.
From Louisville, Kentucky. Look forward to John transferring his membership to our club. He's new with as a lender with Southside Bank in Tyler. Are there other visiting Rotarians that are here with us today? If not, let's start here at the back of the room. If you brought a guest today at any of the three back tables, would you stand and introduce your guest? Any guest of Rotarians? There.
I have a guest, Amanda Pierce. Actually, she's all of our guests. And Amanda is here. She's going to the line right now. But she's our equestrian queen. And she's just returned from a lot of tournaments, and she's very much considering joining. Amanda Pierce. So we'll make her welcome.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And then here at the three front tables, if you have a guest, would you introduce your guest to the club?
I will. This is my amigo de siempre, Price Arredondo from San Miguel de Allende. Price was Rotarian and was part of the chamber for many years.
Wonderful. Welcome. Any other guests of Rotarians?
DM, might I have Amanda Pierce stand up?
Yes, please do. We're glad you're here. Come back often.
Thank you very much, Dr. Edwards, for those introductions. Our greeters for today, who always help to set the tone for the meeting, were Pamela Walters and Patty Eccles. Thank you very, very much for your service to our club. Paul Gleiser's up with This Week in History, one of the favorite portions of our program always look forward to.
You guys will have had enough of me by the end of this meeting. Today, on the 4th of May, in 1970, after several days of student rioting and protest of the war in Vietnam, National Guard troops fired 28 rounds into a group of students at Kent State University in Kent, Ohio, killing 4, wounding 9, including 1 who was permanently paralyzed. On the 5th of May, 1961, U.S. astronaut Alan B. Shepard was launched from Cape Canaveral's Launch Complex 5 atop a small Redstone tactical missile on a suborbital space flight that landed 15 minutes later about 150 miles downrange. Shepard thus became the first American in space. The flight had originally been scheduled for April of 1960, but was postponed 6 times, allowing Soviet cosmonaut Yuri Gagarin to get into space 3 weeks earlier on April 12th and orbit the Earth once. On the 6th of May, 1937, sporting a swastika on its tail, the German Zeppelin Hindenburg erupted into flames, completely destroyed, as it attempted to tie to its mooring mast at Lake Hurst Naval Air Station in New Jersey. 36 people, including 1 ground worker out of 97 on board, were killed. On the 7th of May, this is a big day, 1945, at 2:41 in the morning, German General Alfred Jodl surrendered on behalf of the German military to Allied forces in Reims, France. On the 8th, the next day, 1945, Allied forces formally accepted the unconditional surrender of the German, of the German government, marking the end of the war in Europe. Hundreds of thousands of German soldiers began attempting to flee to the west in order to avoid being captured by the Soviet army, preferring instead to be captured by the Americans. On the 9th of May, 1960, a drug called Innovit 10, manufactured by G.D. Searle, the pharmaceutical company, was approved by the U.S. Food and Drug Administration. It was the first of a long line of prescription drugs that came to simply be called, all in the big group, the pill. On the 10th of May, 1865, everybody knows which pill, right? That pill. On the 10th of May, 1865, after having been on the run, Confederate States President Jefferson Davis was captured by Northern forces near Danville, Virginia. He was charged with treason, but he was never tried. He was released on bail in May of 1867, 2 years later, when several wealthy Northerners put up a portion of the bail money. Birthdays in the coming weeks, starting today, the country Travis turns 65. Tomorrow, baseball great, one of the greatest ever, Willie Mays, turns 92 tomorrow. Actor George Clooney turns 62 on Saturday. Rock and roller Bob Seger, 78, also on Saturday. And rock and roller Billy Joel turns 74 on Tuesday, and that's this week in history.
Thank you, Bob. Okay, we have looking at Rotary birthdays and anniversaries. For May, on May the 3rd, Dr. Venugopal Gopalakrishna Ramani has a birthday. On May the 10th, David Jones and Jim Perkins have a birthday. On May the 15th, Justin Holt. On May 19th, Bill Pascal. And on May 23rd, Christy Hill. Let's sing happy birthday to these Rotarians. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Rotarians. Happy birthday to you. Great. Now, for Rotary anniversaries, on May the 3rd, Bill Pascal has been with us for 5 years. Lisa Chatterton, she's been with us for 11 years. Jim Perkins has been with us for 11 years. On May the 12th, Mary Birch has been with us for 12 years. On May 17th, Holly McFarland has been with us for 11 years. May 23rd, George Roberts Jr. has been with us for 15 years. And on May 29th, Holly Lewis has been with us for 20 years. We now have the Rotary Good News Basket, and all proceeds will go to the East Texas Food Bank Rolling Cart Purchase. And we'll get our Sergeant at Arms, JB3, to take care of that.
Okay, my good news, 21 years ago today, I drove myself to the hospital and gave birth to twins.
Can we talk that one?
Any other good news?
Can anyone hear me? I just want to let you know that the wagon we're using are for people to volunteers use the wagons to help people take their use of cars. Often they're connecting for two families. It's just a bit easy for them, especially when they're older or they have some sort of disability. Gives them a bit more dignity, and they need at least 3 more equipment. Last election we served 485 families in 2.5 hours. And some of them have never been there before. They're really in need. Now, my good news is that we have a lot of fabulous people here who are doing so much to help other people. Also, my grandson has just won a silver medal and a bronze medal at the Australian Junior National Championship.
Wow.
I had the honor and privilege of being at the Mayor's Prayer Breakfast today here in Tyler. It's a National Day of Prayer. I rejoice. Where I came from, we didn't have a city National Day of Prayer event, but here at the New Brookshire Event Center, they had that, not funded by the public, not our tax dollars. It was privately funded by churches and donations, but it was just really refreshing to see people in our government express their faith and their prayer. And I just want to say we are in great hands, you guys, here.
Thank you, Ray.
Well, I had a special blessing this week. My grandson, who is 7, has informed us that he's going to be a preacher. He wants to find a Christian university that's local.
That's wonderful. Are there any, okay?
I have 2, Mr. President. I just wanted 5. But I didn't have 10. Anyway, I just want to remind everybody, if you have had a conversation with Sandy Wells, you will know that she is such a delight to just have a normal conversation. So next week, she is our program, and I can't imagine having, it's about having an outward mindset, and I just can't imagine any of us missing that wonderful presentation. So here's a promotion for Sandy. Let's be here and support her and get some good knowledge. And also, I want to thank Robert Wells. I asked for him publicly not to take the training wheels off for his leadership in this leadership banquet, and then I'll be getting the honor to do that next year. And I thank you, Robert, for he emails me an extra thing every day. I appreciate it. I mean, I really do. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I'm just thankful to be here, and it always makes me smile when I get here.
Blessed to be a part of the Rotary Club.
All right. Any others?
Sure. 2 days ago, I had something removed here, and we got it all. So blessed for that. And this morning, Bryce and I got great news. We won the lottery. We're going to, we got a spot to hike the Dolomites in September. We had done El Camino together, and so we're off on another adventure.
Thank you. Is that it? Thank you all very much.
Dr. Wells.
Okay, Dr. Wells.
Please, everyone call me Sandy. So I have a couple of things. Actually, I have 3 things. Thank you. a tip for that? Thank you. I'd also like to say my grandson, who goes to the University of Wisconsin in Madison, got special recognition for his work in robotics. The kid's a genius. I looked at this thing and I had to look up the words in the dictionary. I had no idea what it was he was talking about. And then the last thing I want to say is the Kentucky Derby and the Kentucky Oaks is this weekend. The Oaks are on Friday, so nobody get in touch with me or anything because I'm looking at my horses for that. And Saturday is the Derby, and it's the 12th race. It runs at 5:45.
Okay, thank you so much. All right, I believe that's it. Wait, we have another? Okay, we're gonna go on. We need your April volunteer hours. Please be sure to turn those in to Holly on any organization, nonprofit and so forth that you've given volunteer hours for. We keep track of that. Please remember to bring your grocery bags to recycle for the East Texas Food Bank Mobile Pantry. Mark your calendars. I think this is a week from Saturday, May 13th, District Assembly will be at Mineola Civic Center beginning at 8 a.m. Registration is now open. Cost is $35 and it includes a continental breakfast and it also includes lunch. And as Dareth pointed out, our program next week is with Dr. Sandy Wells. And then, so let's see, Paul, we've got about 40 minutes I've given you. We all know Paul from our KTVB, also substitute for national program of Jimmy Phelan. We're very blessed and lucky to have someone of Paul's stature and expertise with us.
Jeez. No, that's not like this.
Okay.
If you count yourself that fortunate, we need to get you out a little more. This program, some of you have seen a version of it. I was asked to pinch hit today, so this is a retread and a refresh of a program I've done for you before about 4 years ago. 4 years ago on the KTVB World Tour, we took a group of 76 people, my wife and I and 76 people from East Texas, to cruise the Nile River and to learn about the incredible culture and civilization of Egypt. In first 2 weeks of this year, because my daughter finished her master's degree in December, and as a little girl was fascinated with the topic of Egypt, I took my wife and daughter essentially on the same trip, but first time for my daughter Bethany. And so this is a mashup of those two trips. And the thing that I want to drive into make a point of in this program are two things. Number one, civilization as we understand civilization, where groups of people gather together and work toward a common good and have organization and government. And the Egyptians were the very first. Before that, humans existed, but civilization did not. The Egyptians were the very first. And the Egyptians are the first we know of where people worshipped a higher being and aspired to life after death. The Egyptians were the first. Again, maybe it happened before, but the Egyptians are the first that we know of. And we talk about how ancient civilization. We started doing the KTVB World Tour. My wife and I love Italy. So the first trip that we took 13 years ago, we went to Italy and learned about the Romans and that ancient civilization. The Roman Empire began at the year 27 BC and lasted until 476 AD. Very, very, very ancient civilization. Well, not so much, because there was the Greeks. And the Greeks predate the Romans. They go back, the Hellenistic period of Greece dates from circa 321 BC and ran out of steam just right as the Romans were becoming ascended at 33 BC. You say, well, that's okay, 321 BC, that's 2,400 years ago, a long time. It's nothing compared to the Egyptians. Egyptian civilization we can date to around 3100 BC, and it ran out of steam in 332 BC, the ancient Egyptians, and then the Egyptian culture goes on beyond that. So the Egyptians are very, very, very old. Egypt, when it was first organized and recognized as a country, and actually with two kingdoms, the Upper and Lower Kingdoms. And one of the things about, you say upper and lower, well, that would be upper, that would be lower, but no, because the Nile River is one of the few rivers in the Northern Hemisphere that flows from south to north. It flows from down here in Central Africa, where it rains a lot. It flows north to the Mediterranean Sea, up in here where it never rains. And the Nile River is this artery of life that flows through Egypt. It's the longest river in the world, and it is inextricably linked to our history. But there were two kingdoms, the Upper Kingdom and the Lower Kingdom. They were united about 3100 BC under a guy named Narmer, who is generally recognized as the first pharaoh. And you see a lot of iconography about the uniting of the two kingdoms. You pay attention to the headdress. It's very important. The headdress here, here, and here. Over here on the left, we have the crown that's called the deshret. It's the crown of Lower Egypt, and it looks like a champagne bucket. And then we have the crown of Upper Egypt, which looks like a champagne bottle. And when the two kingdoms were united, we put the champagne bottle into the champagne bucket, and we created the pechet, the crown of the combined kingdoms. And you will see that iconography, you'll see that image everywhere you go in Egypt, because it was a seminal event in the history of the Egyptian culture, the uniting of the upper and lower kingdoms of Egypt. Thus began the pharaonic period of Egypt. It begins with Narmer, who just mentioned, the first pharaoh, circa 3100 BC, and it ends with Elizabeth Taylor in 1962. Actually, it ends with Cleopatra VII in 30 BC, when she and Mark Antony committed suicide and the Romans took over the operation of Egypt. So to think about a civilization that ran more or less intact. It had, just like any civilization, it had its highs and lows, but from 3100 BC to 30 BC, so you got 3,000 years of civilization under pretty much the same set of rules and the same set of religious beliefs and the same general cultural beliefs. You've heard the expression, nothing's etched in stone. In Egypt, everything is etched in stone. Everything is written in stone. The written record of Egypt consists of two things. It consists of papyrus, which they invented, and papyrus is an amazingly durable writing medium. It'll last literally thousands of years, unlike paper, which won't. Papyrus will. And then stone lasts a real long time. And the written record of Egypt is really literally etched in stone. One of the things you will see a lot in Egypt, you see this one that I've highlighted. Look at that symbol right there. You see it? That's called the Ankh, and it's the symbol of life. It is, and if you get a little bit creative, you can see, there's a uterus in there somewhere. Okay, that's what's really going on. That's really what that means. You don't lie, you see what I'm saying, right? Okay. But that's what the Ankh is. It is a symbol of birth and life. And you see it everywhere you go. Deities. The Egyptians, I'm sure humans from the time they walked upright were in awe of their surroundings and to one degree or another deified things that overawed them. But the Egyptians are the first to write it down and give them names. And the big one, the big guy, was the sun god Ra. And you see him, he's depicted as a falcon with the sun disk on his head. And then why Ra, the sun, is the giver of life? Well, because they figured out, without light, crops don't grow. Light is really where it starts. And here's an interesting thing, that this is in the Karnak temple. If you look at this, and you are told what you're looking at by an accredited Egyptologist, right here you have the sun. There's the sun. There is the sky, the clouds in the sky. Over the earth Isn't it interesting that they thought it was round? And then the Egyptian calendar was split into three 120-day segments, three 120-day seasons. You have the Akhet, which was the flood seasons, when all that rain fell in Central Africa, flowed downstream, flooded the Nile River Valley, brought with it rich nutrients, made the soil unbelievably productive. That led to the Peret, which was the growing season, which culminated in the harvest, Shemu, and then the cycle started again. And here we have the sun god Ra and life worshiping, blessing, attending to this cycle of life. So this is where we in the Christian faith, we have our crosses. We have, the Jews have the Star of David. These are their icons, and they're remarkably consistent over thousands of years. As I say, the written record of hieroglyphs. This guy right here with the double crown, he's very important too. He's Amun, A-M-U-N. He's the god of the air, of the atmosphere. He is such an important guy that he and Ra eventually will merge. You'll have Amun Ra, they'll become a single deity. But you see him everywhere. The written record is literally everywhere you look. For the longest time, we as modern humans didn't know what we were looking at. And then along comes a chance discovery while Napoleon is busy pillaging Egypt. The Rosetta Stone, it was found, it was a royal decree issued in 196 BC in Memphis, Egypt. It was written conveniently in 3 languages. Up here you see it's the same thing in 3 languages. Well, that was very convenient because it was written in ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs, Demotic script, and Greek. It was discovered near Rosetta, the present-day Rashid, in 1799 during the Napoleonic campaign in Egypt, and thus we could translate hieroglyphics. And thus the entire written record of Egypt became laid out for us. We now know, looking back thousands of years, by looking at what was written on papyrus and what was literally chiseled into the walls, we can know the history of this ancient civilization. The temples are a very important part of all that because the record was kept at the temples. There are many, many of them. There's some that you'll recognize when I show you the pictures. They were used as sites to worship the gods and to commemorate the pharaohs. The pharaohs kind of do what politicians today do. They kind of try to get themselves right up there on the same level with, gods. They want to be revered. There's only about an estimated 35% of the ancient temples that have been referred to in the writings of the temples that we know about have been discovered. Most of them remain buried. They're underneath the Saharan sand. So we know about, they estimate roughly a third of them. Many were dismantled after the Pharaonic period, and the stone was reused. That's common. And some were lost to the creation of Lake Nasser during the 1960s by the Aswan High Dam. They were literally inundated, flooded, and we'll never see them again. And they do contain the written record of ancient Egypt. The temples, I'm going to hit the high points of the temples. This is Karnak Temple, and that is let's mispronounce his name. Amenhotep, one of the pharaohs. It was part of the monumental city of Thebes. Thebes is now called Luxor. It was constructed between 2000 and 1700 BC. It's approximately 30 pharaohs participated in its construction. It is, oh, come on, don't fail me now. Well, that's going to be inconvenient. It was, computer's frozen. Oh, I see the problem. I think I solved it. There we go. Let's see if that does it. Oh man, come on. It's a Mac. It's not supposed to do that.
There you go.
No, that's me. There we go. All right, now let's see if we've freed it up. Here we are. This was an important little piece of architecture. It's called a high postal hall. And a high postal hall is a room that has a roof over it that's held up with columns. The Egyptians loved columns. The Egyptians invented columns. And the columns remain. The roof was made of wood. It's long gone, but the columns remain. And one of the things that I think is astonishing, considering I have to paint radio towers about every 5 years, that paint was put up 3,000 years ago, and it's still there. And I'm having to repaint radio towers every 5 years. Of course, I'm busy worrying about the environmental content of the paint. They weren't. So the paint they used paint that worked. And your house would stay painted too if you could use that paint. Karnak Temple, as I say, it's 2000 to 1700 BC. And here we have, once again, we see there's Mr. Amun, very important guy. Then we move to the Temple of Dendera. Dendera is important because it was really dedicated to the goddess Hathor. Hathor was the mother of all gods. The gods had to have a mother, and Hathor was the mother. And in the iconography in Dendera Temple, again, if we weren't in a bright room, you'd see how brightly painted that is. If you look right up here, you see what used to be a face. The faces have been chiseled off because this temple got taken over by the Christians in the first century. And they saw they didn't like pagan they didn't like gods other than our God. But the thing about Hathor is she's a woman's face with cow's ears.
Wow.
And she was a goddess. Why? Because cows, calves, milk, they saw that as the origin of life. And so Hathor was the mother of gods. She gave life to the gods who oversee our lives. A very, very important goddess. And then that moves us to Luxor. Luxor is a very, very important temple because it was built not for the purpose of really worshiping any single god, but rather is kind of the temple that looks after all the pharaohs. It became what amounts to the analog to Great Britain's Westminster Abbey, which anytime you had to crown a pharaoh, you went to Luxor to do it. It's where the power and authority of the pharaohs came from. That guy right there is Ramses II. He's one of the most important of all the pharaohs. It is he, we believe, that got in the argument with Moses. It was he that Moses said, to whom Moses said, "Let my people go." He built most of this temple. The reason I like this photograph is one, it shows the scale. Now, when you think about it, let's look at the scale. And number two, what you're looking at with the columns is that's a sheaf of wheat. It's bundled at the top.
Oh, wow.
It's a sheaf of wheat. Why wheat? Because wheat is the source of life. It is calories that can be stored. It'll feed you when the fields are not producing grain. The wheat will last you until they produce grain again. So wheat was a very big deal. So columns in Egypt are lots of times are sheaves of wheat. Again, for their respect for life. Then the temple that I think is absolutely fascinating is Abu Simbel. Who's seen this? This is Ramses II too. He was a big guy, and he had an enormous impact. He was the longest reigning of all the Egyptian pharaohs. And if you look very carefully on this temple, you go from young Ramses to old Ramses. And he was showing how long he intends to hang around when he built this thing. It's dedicated, he has a nearby temple that is dedicated to, again, Hathor. There's the scale, by the way, just you see, literally carved into the side of the mountain. And can you imagine trying to do this today? And to carve granite with that level of precision. I mean, one of the things that they did with us on the trip is they give you a chisel and a hammer and say,
Right.
cut into this granite for us.
Wow.
Yeah, you should try that. It doesn't make a mark. And you have to look at this. And there again, here we have the temple that he built to his wife, and see, there's Hathor again. So his wife was Nefertari, and he built a temple that recognizes and worships Nefertari on behalf of his wife, represents and worships Hathor on behalf of his wife Nefertari, because she is the giver of life to his offspring, who will continue his legacy when he is gone. So the whole thing about the cycle of life is very, very important to the Egyptians, as we're going to get into. And then the last temple I'm going to share with you before we move any further, all that's Ramses. And this is, yeah, you got to have an ego to be a pharaoh. And then before we leave Abu Simbel, you know, look at graffiti today and think about the level of care this guy in 1887 chiseled his name into the temple at Abu Simbel, and he's got serifs on the letters. I mean, how long did it take him to do that versus a can of spray paint today? I mean, this is high level graffiti. Right? So they even did graffiti better then. And here's the last thing about Abu Simbel. It would be underneath Lake Nasser today were it not for a $300 million in today's dollars effort to cut it into pieces, pick it up, and move it to where it sits now. They moved it about 700 yards west and about 300 yards north, and found a place suitable for it, reproduced the mountain into which it was carved, and then reassembled the temple so that it wouldn't be lost. It was considered to be that important.
How long did it take them to do that?
Yeah, they had nothing time on it.
5 years.
Wow.
Took them 5 years. Beautiful thing about working in Egypt, you can work 365 days. It never rains. There's no rainouts. And it's either pleasant, it's either 70 degrees or 115 degrees, but it's never freezing. You know, you can literally work every day. Be very productive. This is the temple of Hatshepsut, a king, a female, but she called herself a king. Regarded as the first really historically significant female, Hatshepsut. She was the first female who made a mark on history. She built this as a mortuary temple to herself. It is fantastically big. It sits, again, carved into the side of a mountain, right on the banks of the Nile. And here you can see more scale on it. There's the temple right there. Just an aside, look what the Nile River does. Where there's irrigation, rich and green and verdant, and where there's no irrigation, you have never seen dry like the Sahara Desert, and you can literally stand between green, verdant, life and growth, and desert where nothing can grow. The Nile River does all its, where the irrigation stops, life stops. And this, again, this is another temple that got taken over by the Christians for a while. They use this as a chapel. So there, if you look around there, you'll see they carved in some early Christian iconography inside the temple of Hatshepsut. So Ra, the sun god in the afterlife. This is the thing about the Egyptians and their belief in, and they're planting the seed of the idea of eternal life. Here we see again, there's the sun god Ra. There he is. The sun, here's their concept. The sun rises in the morning. It travels across the sky. It sinks below the horizon in the evening and descends into the underworld, only to be resurrected and rise again. And thus the Egyptians came to believe in an afterlife, and the idea that even when you die, you will continue to live. Thus the sun was deified. Thus the sun god Ra. They were the first to have the idea that you're going to live even after you die. Scarab beetles in the afterlife. Another big icon with the Egyptians. Why? Well, because the scarab beetles every evening, right before sunset, about 30 minutes before the sun goes down, and they somehow seem to know, because as the days ebb and flow, about half an hour before sunset, they dig a hole in the ground, they burrow and disappear. And then, just about 30 minutes before sunrise the next morning, they burrow their way out. And so they disappear into the underworld, and they come back resurrected. And here's the thing is, they lay their eggs in their own dung, and then roll that into balls, that's why they're called the dung beetle, and push the dung balls out of their burrows just before the eggs hatch. So there we have yet again affirmation of descending, dying, descending, disappearing, and coming back, and the rebirth of life. So the Egyptians, they're all in on beetles too. The scarab beetle, you'll be, wherever you go, there'll be a guy with, be a whole bunch of guys selling stuff. A lot of them will be selling scarab beetles. A lot of those scarab beetles made in China, but they're selling them. And so I have one. I couldn't resist. It's just information is made in China, so I bought it. And the scarab thus became hugely symbolic of the cycle of life, death, and rebirth. So this is the Egyptians' thing. Okay, so the Egyptians are into life after death. That's their deal. The afterlife is very important. Remember Ramses? There he is. There's Ramses II. But we can't let him get away. We have to preserve his body. Preservation of the body is everything because you're going to need it in the afterlife. Mummification. The Egyptians did it. Said, how can he be in the afterlife? How can he have an afterlife and have a body? So the Egyptians were at pains to preserve the body. The remains had to be properly prepared in order to pass bodily into the afterlife, and you needed your stuff. Earthly goods had to come with you. The higher your station, the more with you. And the place of entombment was extremely important. I'll tell you why in a minute. So the Egyptians first started with what were called mastabas, where somebody that was important that had the money to see to his entombment and his burial would have a mastaba. It translates roughly to mud bench. It's a bench. And so you stack rocks on top of each other and you create this little mound, and it's called a mastaba, and underneath, down there is the body. The Egyptian use was eternal house. It was used in the pre-dynastic period, prior to 3100 BC. The above-ground structure sat on top of a subterranean chamber that was carved into the earth, and that's where you awaited your journey into the afterlife. Along comes a guy named Djoser. He was a pharaoh, and they stacked a mud thing and put another one. They said, well, add another layer. He looked at it and said, that looks good. Do another layer. And they said, well, that looks good. Do another layer. And so he just kept stacking layers so there wasn't any room to stack any more layers, and we got the first pyramid. And this is the oldest stone structure in the world. There's not a stone structure older than this. It was done by Djoser because he liked the idea. Well, that gave birth to the idea, well, the pyramid looks cool, but those steps look kind of clunky. So along came Khufu, Khafra, and Menkaure, and they built the pyramids as we understand them. We'll be coming back to that subject in just a minute. So that's what we're going to put into the afterlife. That'll be the place to put it, particularly if you're an important guy like a pharaoh. You need a monument. This is what you need in order to have a great journey into the afterlife. This is, you can see them, you know where they are, and you know the people that know these things, that know how the culture works. The pharaoh, rich guy, has his stuff because he's going to need it in the afterlife. Let's go raid the damn thing and take the stuff. And pyramids called enormous attention to themselves, so the pyramids were looted about 10 minutes after they were closed. I mean, the pyramids got ripped off really quick. And done in the dark of the night, they figured out the way in, and they went there and got all the stuff. So the king said, I'm not having my stuff taken because I need it in the afterlife. So they moved to the Valley of the Kings. And the Valley of the Kings, they have rock-cut tombs cut into the rock. And you can see this is Ramses IV's tomb. There at the end is his sarcophagus, and there's the story of his life. Here are all the things that he did, all written in hieroglyphics. Everything you need to know about him, all chiseled into the walls, and all the what we would call biblical passages. They're not biblical, but what we would call biblical passages. The religious observation, all the things attendant to his proper passage into the afterlife, chiseled into the walls. Very, very elaborate. Going back in terms of the Valley of the Kings, you notice something right here. What's the shape of that? Pyramid. Is it an accident that's where they decided that particular valley they chose for the burial of kings? Don't know, but there's an argument to be made. They liked the idea of the pyramid, they didn't like how visible it was. So they tried to bury tombs and put them underground, seal it off, cover it with the sands of the Sahara. You don't know where it is. It'll be there for eternity. The king can make his journey into the afterlife. Then along comes a king named Tutankhamun. I'll teach you some Egyptian. Tut means image. We've already said that Ankh is life, the living image of Amun.
Wow.
Tutankhamun. They say Tutankhamun, and if you're talking to Tutankhamun. Absolutely unremarkable guy. He took the throne when he was a kid, about age 8, around 1334 BC, accomplished exactly nothing. He was physically small, he was deformed and sickly, he was a very, very unimpressive guy. He was only 9 years, he lived till age 17, he died. Okay. He literally amounted to nothing. Why do we care about it?
Steve Martin.
That's it. We care about it because we found his Carter 101 years ago, in 1922, found his tomb almost completely intact. It's the only one that has been found completely intact. That's what made Tutankhamun important. We saw what an actual Egyptian journey into the afterlife looked like, and even for a meaningless king like this, is pretty impressive. He had a lot of stuff with him, most of which is on display in the Egyptian Museum or in the British Museum. An incredible collection of stuff. It's the most complete trove of Egyptian funerary goods ever discovered, and that's why we care about it. His tomb, you saw that tomb of Ramses IV, how elaborate his was. King Tut's was not so much, because he died young, he didn't amount to anything. They kind of scribbled some stuff on the wall and stuck him in his sarcophagus. But filled the tomb full of funerary goods, worth with gold and enormously valuable stuff. But they didn't care much about it. He was largely forgotten. And would have been if Howard Carter hadn't found the tomb. It's small, it was hastily arranged. It was likely intended for a much lesser figure than a king. They had said, he what? He died? Really? He's only 17. What are we going to do? We got to find a tomb. Oh, geez. So they found one that was kind of half completed and stuck him in it. The only burial room walls, only the burial room walls were decorated, unlike other tombs. And there's evidence to suggest that it was robbed twice in antiquity, but it was left largely intact. Not much got taken. It stands as the most nearly intact tomb ever discovered. He's still there, by the way. His mummy is still there. He was a sickly kid. He's a really sickly mummy.
Little puny.
But stuff like this was found. You know, this golden throne that he sat on, and with canopic jars. One of the things the Egyptians did in mummification, they took out your liver, your stomach, your intestines, and your, not your heart, and put them, put them in jars with elaborate lids, took those canopic jars, put that in its own container. Here you have the god Osiris, garden, Tut's innards. They're all stuck in there, and this was all found in his tomb. Egyptian daily life. I've got time, I'm in good shape. Egypt is an amazing place in that it is of the 21st century, but much of it is unchanged from the 2,000 years before the birth of Christ. And so you will see regularly, that's his means of transportation. You will see this sort of thing. That's in Cairo. These guys go down the street on their camels, and there are the cars right alongside. That is not uncommon in Egyptian daily life. This guy, if it were not for the rubber tires, unchanged from 3,000 years ago, this farmer, and there's a railroad track there. But otherwise, it looked like that 3,000 years ago. Most Egyptians are subsistence. The poverty is pretty intense. If you have a professional job, live in Cairo, you're in the middle class like people in this room, but most people look like that. That's how they get their food every day. The beautiful thing about the Nile Valley is it is incredibly rich in its output of produce. Nobody's hungry. There's plenty of food. But this is how people live in Egyptian daily life. And then Egypt is absolutely dependent on the tourist trade. Those camels all exist for you to pay them $15 to ride. That's why those camels are there. And the kids, the local swimming pool is the Nile River, local kids. And everywhere you go, they're just like any place else you go, there's guys that are selling you trinkets. Xi Jinping made all of that. All of it came from China. And then you get the guy, this guy's got an act for whatever you're willing to give him, it's negotiable. He will kiss a live cobra for you.
Lucha Loco.
Yeah, and he did. I gave him $5. Rather have dollars than Egyptian pounds. I gave him $5. I took his picture and kissed a cobra for me. The pyramids. There are about 80 pyramids in Egypt. There's only 3 you care about. I'm going to show them to you. The most famous and most recognized are on the Gleiser Plateau. This is an interesting story. This guy in the little horse cart, there was a church bus, a church group, right there, hanging around. I saw this guy coming from way back here. And I said, if those idiots would get out of the way, this could be a picture. And I'm standing there, and I'm like, would you please get out? God, this could be a heck of a picture. Just get the ancient horse cart, there's the pyramids, no sign of civilization, looks as ancient as it is. Please, oh God. And finally, they loaded up and left just as the guy who got right there is able to shoot this picture. But that's what it looked like 2,000 years ago. They sit on the southwest edge of Cairo, and if you stand at the Sphinx and look where the Sphinx is looking due east, you will see the Pizza Hut and the KFC right there on the edge of Cairo. The pyramids are made of 2.5 million limestone blocks, each averaging 2.5 tons.
Wow.
The numbers are crazy. They're crazy. Somebody sat and did the math, calculated the number of daylight hours available in the approximately 10 years it took to build that pyramid. And so with that number of blocks and that many daylight hours, you have to set a block at the rate of every 180 seconds. Every 3 minutes, you're setting a block in. Yeah. Can you imagine trying to get that done today? Unlikely that it was slave labor. There's a village, a whole village next to the pyramid complex. You can see the remnants of it, and they were paid because you wouldn't have gotten the productivity out of slaves that you would get out of people that you're paying to do work. And in order to get this done, you have to have a high level of productivity. And there's speculation that inside the pyramids there are yet undiscovered rooms and passages. That has recently been confirmed with respect to the Great Pyramid. They've actually figured that out. There's some stuff that's just now being opened up. I mean, literally just in the past months. Here are the pyramids as you understand them. This is the Great Pyramid. It looks like smaller than this one. It's not. It's the largest of the 3. It sits on bedrock that's 35 feet below this one. This is Khufu. It was built around 2580 BC. His son comes along, Khafra, said, well, I'm going to build a pyramid. I won't build it bigger than my dad's, but I'll build it on a higher piece of ground. People think it's bigger, but it's not actually. It's smaller than my dad's. And then finally, Khafra's son, Menkaure, built about 2510. Those are the pyramids that you know. I did something interesting. I took my phone and set it on the edge of on the base of the pyramid and said, how precisely are the pyramids aligned? Can you see that? It's 90, I mean, I set it right on the edge, lined it up as carefully as I could. It is precisely aligned. Which is astonishing to me, actually. And then we have the Egypt. There are 900, right? The sphinxes. We have 900 sphinxes in Egypt. This is the one you care about. It's a monolith, which means it's carved out of a single block of stone, and it is believed to be Khafra, the guy who built the second pyramid. And there's his pyramid, and there's that guy for $15 you can ride his camel. The Gleiser complex. It is one of the most visited tourist sites in the world. It is. The pictures don't begin to do it justice. You can't imagine anything built on this scale today, let alone nearly 5,000 years ago. And that is our program. Anybody have questions? Got a couple of minutes. Yes, Gareth. Yes, let me tell you about the Egyptians. They're some of the warmest, friendliest people I've ever been around. You know, travel. We take this group all over Europe. The Egyptians are phenomenally warm and friendly people. They're really nice. They're as capitalistic as you and me. They understand how important tourism is. It's really, besides cotton and farming, it's their #1 industry. The Arab Spring, that guy that sells camel rides, he went hungry. He needs people showing up. He doesn't hate Americans, he loves America, he loves Europeans. He loves people to come. When tourism gets cut off by the Arab Spring or by COVID, those people don't eat. And they were at pains to tell us both times that I went how much they appreciated that we came, and please go home and tell your friends to come. And I never at any time did I feel unsafe, particularly if you're with an organization, you travel with a group the way we were, you're organized, you've got professionals taking care of you, what you need. I wouldn't try to do Egypt by myself. I would do it as part of an organized thing. You have security traveling with you. And I wouldn't knock around Cairo by myself, but I wouldn't knock around Detroit by myself either. I mean, I'm not being facetious. I mean, you'd be at risk knocking around Cairo all by yourself. But the answer to your question is never, at no time did we ever see a malevolent stare. Did we see anybody, looking askance at us because we're Americans? All we saw were people who were glad to see us. Did that answer your question?
Yes.
Anybody else? Yes, ma'am.
So when you started, I did a little search on my phone because I don't know if you know, but my mother was from South America. My mother was from Peru. She's not Amanda, but she came from South America. And I knew that there were pyramids in Peru as well.
Yes, and in Mexico.
And in Mexico. The ones in Peru are older than the ones in Mexico. And in fact, Cartman's dating places them at about the same age as the.
Yes, that is true.
However, they don't receive the same press.
They're not as big, and they're not as elaborate, and yes, there are pyramids in South America, and they're impressive. I've seen the pyramids in Egypt. They're nothing compared to walking up to the Great Pyramid. And there's two entirely different experiences.
I was fascinated though to see that though,
Yeah.
because I studied Latin American studies, and I knew that they did embalming there. And Kon-Tiki says that when they came across, when the antecedents came, they believed that there was a very strong Egyptian connection.
There probably is. Yes, sir.
I just go ask you, I've been in Central America a lot, seen an attempt to make pyramids down there. The people even look like Egyptians. I just wondered if you know anything about the Egyptians making their way to Central America.
No,
Okay.
I don't. That's entirely, but I'm even speculating. I just be talking and not talking with any expertise. Somebody up here. Yes, sir.
Quick question. Don and I missed your trip to Ireland coming up.
Which is a week from tomorrow.
Yeah, what's the next one, Paul?
We're gonna do an African photo safari in Kenya,
When will that be?
the year from now.
Okay.
All right.
We'll miss it.
Thank you.
Great job.
Good job, Paul. Thank you very much.
Have my certificate.
Yes, we have a certificate suitable for framing.
Beautiful, thank you.
Yes. The Literary Council for the wonderful job you did today. Okay, it's time now for the Ace of Diamonds. How much is in the kitty?
$1,278.
Wow, that's a useful amount of money. Okay, let's have Paul draw the winning ticket. Last three digits.
The last three digits are 611.
Oh,
There we go.
that was the first ticket sold today.
It was.
Yeah.
Wow.
It is a third time, someone's lost. I've never gotten, this is my first time. Really? Yes.
Yes.
Better luck next time. Let us stand for the four-way rotary test of the things we think, say, or do first. Second. Third. Fourth.
Beneficial to all concerned.
We are adjourned.